The Young and the Restless spoilers indicate that the fallout from Victor Newman's twisted scheme is only just beginning, and for Jack Abbott, the nightmare that unfolded on that yacht will leave wounds that may never fully heal. What should have been nothing more than another tense confrontation between rivals turned into a carefully orchestrated trap, one designed to shatter Jack's life from the inside out. Victor Newman had always been a master strategist. For decades, he had manipulated enemies and allies alike, always thinking several moves ahead. But even for Victor, the events that played out on that yacht crossed into especially dangerous territory. By unleashing Patty Williams back into Jack Abbott's life, Victor set in motion a disaster that would ripple through Genoa City for months and possibly years to come. Patty Williams had always been unpredictable. Her obsession with Jack dated back decades, and anyone who knew their complicated history understood how volatile that dynamic could become. Patty wasn't simply a woman with lingering feelings for Jack, she was someone whose love could easily twist into something darker. Victor knew that. In fact, that was exactly why Patty was such a useful piece in his scheme. The plan was simple in theory but devastating in practice. Put Jack in a situation where he couldn't control his own actions, unleash Patty's obsession, and let the fallout destroy Jack's marriage to Diane Jenkins Abbott. Unfortunately for Jack, that's exactly what happened. On that fateful night aboard the yacht, Jack never had a chance. The moment he stepped into Victor's carefully constructed trap, events began unfolding beyond his control. What Jack didn't realize at the time was that he had been drugged. The substance running through his system clouded his judgment, dulled his instincts, and stripped away the careful restraint that usually guided his actions. Jack Abbott was a man known for his discipline and moral compass, but under the influence of whatever he'd been given, those defenses crumbled. And Patty Williams was right there waiting. To anyone who didn't know the truth, the situation looked scandalous. Two people with a complicated past. A private room. The implication of betrayal. But the truth was far more disturbing. Jack Abbott wasn't acting out of desire. He wasn't betraying Diane out of weakness or secret longing. He was a man whose mind had been chemically altered, manipulated into a state where resisting temptation became nearly impossible. Under normal circumstances, Jack Abbott would never betray Diane Jenkins Abbott, especially not with Patty Williams. Their marriage had survived too much. Years of misunderstandings, betrayals, heartbreak, and reconciliation had brought them to a place where they believed they could finally trust one another completely. Jack had fought for Diane's. He had defended her when others doubted her. He had opened his heart again, despite knowing how risky that decision could be. For Diane, Jack represented stability, forgiveness, and the possibility of a future where the past no longer controlled their lives. That fragile piece shattered the moment Diane walked into that room. The events of the March 16 episode promise one of the most devastating scenes in recent Y&R history. Diane Jenkins Abbott wasn't expecting to witness the destruction of her marriage. She wasn't prepared to see her husband lying under the sheets with Patty Williams, the woman who had haunted Jack's past for so long. When Diane opened that door, the shock hit her instantly. For a split second, she likely couldn't even process what she was seeing. Her husband, her greatest supporter, the man who had promised to stand by her no matter what. And there he was, seemingly sharing an intimate moment with another woman. Not just any woman. A Patty Williams. The betrayal cut deep. The humiliation cut even deeper. In that moment, Diane didn't know about the drugs. She didn't know about Victor's manipulation. All she saw was what appeared to be undeniable proof that Jack had broken his vows. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. The pain, anger, and disbelief came crashing down all at once. Diane lashed out, slapping Jack across the face and calling him disgusting. Those words carried the weight of heartbreak. Because from Diane's perspective, the man she loved had just shattered the trust they worked so hard to rebuild. For Jack, the moment was equally horrifying. Still struggling through the haze of whatever he'd been drugged with, Jack likely couldn't even understand how everything had spiraled so far out of control. Confusion, guilt, and panic collided in his mind. Even as the fog began to clear, the damage had already been done. The image Diane saw would be impossible to erase. And that image was exactly what Victor had been counting on. Victor Newman knew that appearances often mattered more than truth. He understood that a single shocking moment could destroy a relationship, even if the circumstances behind that moment were far more complicated. In Victor's mind, the plan had worked perfectly. Jack Abbott's marriage was now hanging by a thread. And Diane Jenkins Abbott was left questioning everything she believed about the man she loved. Peter Bergman, who has portrayed Jack Abbott for decades, recently spoke about the storyline in an interview with Soap Opera Digest. His words offered a chilling glimpse into just how significant this moment will be for Jack's future. According to Bergman, what viewers saw on that yacht is only the beginning. The actor described the shocking encounter as just a spark for the fuse. That metaphor paints a clear picture. The explosion hasn't happened yet. The fallout hasn't fully arrived. Everything that unfolded that night is merely the starting point for a much larger story, one that will permanently alter Jack Abbott's life. Bergman hinted that the consequences of the yacht fiasco will stretch far beyond a single argument or misunderstanding. In fact, he suggested that the scars from this night will remain with Jack for years to come. What this portends for Jack Abbott's life is so much bigger than what you see on screen right now, Bergman explained. Jack Abbott's life is forever changed on that yacht. Those words carry enormous weight. Jack Abbott has faced countless challenges throughout his life, corporate wars, family betrayals, personal demons, but this situation may be different. Because this time the damage isn't just professional or strategic. It's deeply personal. Jack's identity as a loyal husband and honorable man has been called into question. And even if the truth eventually comes out, repairing Diane's trust may prove far more difficult than exposing Victor's scheme. Of course, there's always the possibility that Bergman is simply building excitement around the storyline. Soap opera actors often hype dramatic arcs to keep audiences invested. But even if that's partially true, the emotional impact of the yacht scandal is undeniable. Diane Jenkins Abbott isn't someone who forgets betrayal easily. Her life has been shaped by deception, manipulation, and survival. Trust has never come easily to her. When she finally allowed herself to believe that Jack would always stand by her, she opened herself up in ways she rarely does. Seeing Jack with Patty Williams felt like the ultimate confirmation of her worst fears. So now Diane is preparing to walk away. Spoilers suggest that after the confrontation, Diane will decide she can't stay at the Abbott mansion. The memories, the humiliation, and the constant reminders of what she believes Jack did will be too much to bear. Packing her bags and leaving will feel like the only way to protect herself from further pain. For Jack, watching Diane walk out the door will be devastating. He'll know that the situation isn't what it appears to be. He'll know he was drugged. But convincing Diane of that truth will be another battle entirely. Especially when Victor Newman is standing in the background, quietly enjoying the chaos he created. And as the dust begins to settle, Jack Abbott will realize that his life has just entered one of the darkest chapters he has ever faced. The aftermath of that terrible night on the yacht begins to spread through Genoa City almost immediately, like ripples moving outward from a stone dropped into still water. For Jack Abbott, the realization of what Victor Newman has done will settle in slowly but painfully. At first, Jack struggles just to piece together the fragments of memory from that night. The drug that had been slipped into his system left him with blurred moments and confusing flashes of events that don't quite make sense. He remembers Patty Williams appearing unexpectedly. He remembers feeling strangely disoriented. He remembers a sense of vulnerability he rarely experiences. But the exact sequence of what happened is frustratingly unclear. That uncertainty becomes another layer of torment for Jack. Even though he knows something was terribly wrong, the inability to clearly explain it makes his defense sound weak. And in matters of betrayal, perception often outweighs explanation. Diane Jenkins Abbott is in no mood to listen to explanations. After leaving the Abbott mansion, she retreats into a protective emotional shell. The pain she felt in that moment on the yacht continues to replay in her mind again and again. Every detail feels vivid. The bed, the sheets, Patty Williams, and Jack. Diane had fought hard to rebuild her life in Genoa City. Her return had been controversial to say the least. Many people doubted her motives and questioned whether she had truly changed. But Jack had stood by her. He believed in her when few others did. That belief became the foundation of their relationship. Now Diane can't help wondering if she made a terrible mistake trusting him again. Meanwhile, Patty Williams remains an unpredictable wildcard in the entire situation. For Patty, the events of that night may feel like a twisted dream finally coming true. Her feelings for Jack Abbott have never truly faded, no matter how much time has passed or how many disasters have followed in their wake. To Patty, Jack has always represented the love she was denied. The fact that Victor manipulated circumstances to bring them together again may only reinforce Patty's distorted perception that fate is on her side. That possibility makes the situation even more dangerous. If Patty begins to believe that she and Jack share some destined connection, she may become even more determined to insert herself into his life. Victor Newman, of course, remains several steps ahead. While others deal with the emotional wreckage, Victor calmly observes the consequences of his plan. For him, the goal was never simply to embarrass Jack. Victor wanted to dismantle the alliance between Jack and Diane. He wanted to weaken them both. And by all appearances, he has succeeded. Victor understands human nature well enough to know that even if the truth eventually surfaces, the damage to Jack and Diane's marriage may already be permanent. Trust, once broken, rarely returns in exactly the same form. But Victor may have underestimated one thing: Jack Abbott's determination. As the shock begins to wear off, Jack's anger toward Victor grows stronger. He knows Victor is responsible. And once Jack becomes certain of that truth, he will not let it go unanswered. For Jack Abbott, revenge is not always about dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's about patience, strategy, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Still, Jack's immediate priority remains Diane. No matter how furious he becomes with Victor, the thought of losing Diane Jenkins Abbott is far more painful. Jack will likely spend the coming days trying desperately to reach her. Calling, explaining, pleading for the chance to tell his side of the story. But Diane's wounded pride and broken trust make those conversations nearly impossible. Every attempt Jack makes may only remind Diane of the image she cannot forget. Eventually, the tension between them leads to a painful reality: a separation. Diane Jenkins Abbott and Jack Abbott begin living apart, each struggling with their own version of heartbreak. For Diane, distance provides a sense of control. She convinces herself that stepping away from the marriage is the only way to preserve her dignity. For Jack, the separation feels like a punishment for a crime he didn't knowingly commit. As weeks pass, Genoa City becomes filled with speculation about the collapse of one of its most prominent couples. Friends take sides, rumors spread, and Victor Newman quietly continues his usual business empire, acting as though none of this chaos traces back to him. Yet despite everything, there may still be a glimmer of hope. Upcoming story developments suggest that Jack and Diane will eventually find themselves in the same room again during a special event. A fundraiser connected to the crossover with Beyond the Gates is scheduled to take place in June. At that event, Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott are expected to appear together. What that appearance means remains uncertain. It's possible that by then, the anger and shock will have softened enough for them to communicate honestly again. Time has a way of changing perspectives. Once the initial pain fades, Diane may begin to question whether Jack truly betrayed her intentionally. The idea that he was drugged and manipulated could start to make more sense as more information comes to light. On the other hand, the public nature of such a high-profile event may force them to maintain appearances. Even couples facing serious problems sometimes choose to present a united front in public. Smiling for photographs, exchanging polite conversation, pretending everything is fine. Behind closed doors, however, the truth could be very different. Still, many longtime viewers believe that Jack and Diane remain an endgame couple. Their relationship has survived too many storms to be permanently destroyed by Victor Newman's latest scheme. In the grand narrative of Genoa City, villains rarely get the final victory. Patty Williams may have temporarily inserted herself into Jack's life again, but she has always been more of a chaotic disruptor than a lasting partner. Victor Newman may believe he has succeeded in tearing Jack and Diane apart. But the truth has a way of surfacing eventually. When it does, Diane Jenkins Abbott may finally see the situation for what it truly was. Jack Abbott wasn't unfaithful. He was manipulated, drugged, and used as a pawn in Victor Newman's elaborate game. That realization could open the door to forgiveness. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. Until then, Jack Abbott will continue facing the consequences of a night he never truly controlled. The emotional scars Peter Bergman spoke about will linger, shaping Jack's decisions and relationships moving forward. Because sometimes the most devastating battles are not fought in boardrooms or corporate takeovers. Sometimes they unfold in quiet moments between two people who once trusted each other completely. And for Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott, the journey back to that trust may be the hardest challenge they have ever faced. If you enjoy Y&R spoilers, updates, and daily drama, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos.